Good evening. Ooh, I'm loud. That's good. All right. So we are in chapter 9, and let us open up in prayer. Lord, we humble ourselves before you. We invite you, Lord, to just take over this lesson, Lord God, and open up our hearts and minds, Lord, that we would hear what you're saying, Lord, that you would reveal yourself to us, that you would teach us and train us, Lord, and reveal yourself to us. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right. We are in chapter 9. We're right around, I want to pick it up in, I've mentioned some of this. I didn't go verse by verse, but let's go to verse 6. All right? Actually, let's back it up a little bit. Let's go to verse 3, because I want to talk about this a little bit. I know I talked about the rainbow a little bit, which is over in the next couple of verses, but I don't think I really went into this one the way I wanted to. Okay? Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And surely I will require lifeblood. From every beast I will require it, and from every man's brother I will require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood will be shed. For in the image of God he made man. Okay, now I did go on to the, as for you, be fruitful and multiply and populate the earth and multiply in it. But I want to go back a little bit. So, who established the death penalty? God. Do you know a lot of Christians think the death penalty is like evil? If you say that or hold to that kind of belief, you are literally indicting God as being mean and as being unjust. God is the one. And it wasn't a Jewish law. And that's the things I want to bring out here. See, many, I'll back up a little bit. It was the rabbinical teaching, even going back to, when I say rabbinical, that means of the rabbis, and whenever I do it, that I go back to Second Temple period and before. That's the time of Jesus and before, because after that, many things were corrupted. So we do not follow those things after, okay? But we go back to Second Temple Judaism. So you're going to hear me say that. I want you to get used to that so you know what that is. What that means is Judaism in the time of Jesus. Okay? Second Temple is after the people came back from exile. The Second Temple was built. And that is the one where Jesus came to. Okay? So that's what I mean. In Second Temple Judaism, that's just a way to get you to the right time in history. Right? Where where the Pharisaical teaching specifically, the teaching of the Pharisees, was extremely accurate. And Jesus even said that they sit in Moses' seat and that their teaching is correct. Their hearts were totally wrong. They were totally and completely prideful, and they did not have the love of God and all of those things. And they were hypocritical and all of that. But as far as the teaching goes, it was correct. Now, not the Sadducees. You have to throw them out. There was a good side, and easy way to remember it is Pharisee good, Sadducee bad. Right? Get that in your mind and you'll remember it. Okay? But why that's important is because that's where we get a lot of great information. All right, from the teaching then. And there was always a teaching then, and that's when I say rabbinical, that's what I mean, that this was God's covenant with mankind. That they still uphold to that there were still righteous Gentiles who are not part of the Jewish people, who are not part of the 12 sons of Jacob, okay, of Israel, but yet could be righteous before God by adhering to the Noahic, as they called it, covenant. All right? Does everybody get that? And so you notice that eating blood, okay, was here. Didn't come through Moses. It wasn't given for Israel. It was given for all mankind. Okay? And this one again shows up in Acts 15, and we're going to spend some time on that later as we go. Okay? But so the death penalty and the eating of blood. Now, I want you to notice something important. It also answers the question of the most quoted and misunderstood and twisted verse in the Bible. You know what it is? Thou shalt not kill. It is the most taken out of context and twisted verse in the entire Bible. You'll see Christians marching that don't really study the Bible, but Christians marching with thou shalt not kill signs and going against the military and all of that, and they think that, you know, there should be no war and we should have no military and all of that, right? Well, they have a severe problem because they haven't actually read the Bible properly, because if so, then did God have them kill anybody? Did God kill anyone and have any of his people kill anybody? Yeah. So you have a problem there, don't you? Well, the problem is answered right here. You see it? Whoever sheds man's blood, by who?
By humans.
By man's blood, by man his blood will be shed. Okay? And that is, certainly there is unjust war, but there is certainly just war. And defending of innocent lives is just in God's eyes. Alright? So there is a time where righteous men have to defend the innocent and kill, is there not? Now it's just something we're going to establish now, because we got to get that as we go through. Alright? And that is something that I find this generation is totally screwed up on. They've totally lost that. If you go back even to the last generation, you know, most godly people understood that. It wasn't something that but my generation and younger, they don't understand these things at all. Okay? But take away the military, take away the police, and they'd want them back quickly. Trust me. All right? Anyway, so that is an important lesson. So the death penalty was instituted by God. And I want to tell you something about it. It is just. But it's also more than that. It's a law given by God, and that when righteous men don't uphold it, they're actually letting that innocent blood be not be accounted for. All right? And see, what comes up here is something called blood guiltiness. Blood guiltiness. Now, if you learn that term, because that term goes all the way through, even when we get down through Israel's history, we get down through Saul and Samuel and David, and we get down through the kings, the term blood guiltiness. It's a biblical term. Okay? And what it means is there is always, all blood has to be accounted for, whether by a person's own choices, and they say their blood be on their own head. That means the blood guiltiness is theirs. They were not innocent. All right? Innocent blood, there has to be an accounting for. Okay? Now this is God's rule, not man's. When man goes against that rule, then we're hurting God. Oh, well, not hurting God. Well, yeah, actually, that's okay to say. But we're going against his ways. And there's a simple reason for that. It's very simple. Take a second to think about why is that God's way? Why does innocent blood have to be accounted for? Because God is love. Simple and easy. Because God is love, innocent blood must be accounted for. And didn't he tell us the life was in the blood? Right? So when innocent blood is shed, you're going to see as you go on, that God holds them accountable for innocent blood. Okay? And it's a very important theme that we got to establish now. Blood guiltiness. All right? And there's always, all through the rest of Scripture, you're going to see either blood guiltiness being on the person through rebelling against God or breaking his commands, or shedding innocent blood. But there's always has to be an accounting for it. Okay? And that is a very important lesson. And it's because God is love that it has to be that way. And you can just take a glimpse on that to see how screwed up we've gone from that. All right? Loving societies deal and bring an accounting for innocent blood. Okay? Godly society. Ungodly society allows innocent blood to go unpunished. Now, can a person repent? Of course. Should a person repent? Of course. Can they go to heaven and be with the Lord? Of course. Absolutely. The thief on the cross said, I'm getting the due penalty for my choices. But did he go to heaven that night? Yes, he did. That's not the point. The point is about society. And why is this so important that the Lord established? He put down two things that are incredibly important. He's going to tell Noah and his sons, he told them about the rainbow to take their fear away, that they have a covenant, that the Lord is going to not do this again, that they can breathe easy, right? That the climate has changed, that things are going to be harsh. Okay? He also now has released them to eat blood. No, not blood. Sorry, I messed that up. To eat animals. Okay? Now, that is a humongous thing. Noah and his sons are vegetarian. Noah has been a vegetarian for over 500 years. Think about that. And now he's being released to eat animals. And anything that can be eaten, he can eat it. Now, if you're wondering about the kosher laws, but didn't God give the kosher laws? We're going to get to that. I'm going to explain that thoroughly. All right? Every year, undoubtedly, no matter what, I explain this over and over and over again, and I still have people coming up to me after I explain it and saying, so am I allowed to have bacon? And then I have to explain it again. And it goes, I see that there's like a blockage there, because we start to feel like, once you get there, like, so this is the covenant to mankind. Okay? Israel has a unique call, a covenant that is separating them out from the world. We're going to get to that. It's taking them out of the world and separating them. All right? This is for mankind. So was mankind given the right to have dominion over the animal kingdom and eat them if necessary? Yes. Was that a God-given right? Yes, it was. Now, you thought, well, we know that. But see, those things are being challenged and no one knows how to refute it. That's a very important thing. God gave us the right to eat whatever we have to eat to survive. And that is the key to the question. Survival. This is a different world than the world they left. If we were not allowed to eat animals, and then you're going to think of, you have modern trucks and you have ships and we can get things around and we can ship things around. Forget all that. Go back 300 years. Okay? If you were not allowed to eat any animals of any kind, only vegetation, right? How much of the earth would be full of people? How many places would be uninhabitable on this planet? A lot of it. A lot of it. And you would have people all crammed into the agricultural good farming soil, because that's the only place you'd be able to survive if you are not allowed to kill and eat. So why did God give it to us? Why did God allow it? One reason. Survival is the reason. Don't look deeper into it. That's it. Was it God's plan? Is it what God wants? Does He want us to? No. Because, listen, a good Christian vegetarian will try to give you that. I've had some bouts with them. Trust me. The thing is, they usually lose. Well, they always lose. I'm sorry to say it, not to sound arrogant, but this is the reason why they lose. Because who's the boss? Yes, but remember the answer I'm always telling you to get. Who is in charge and who do we listen to? Jesus. Did Jesus kill and eat? Yes. Did Jesus take fish in his hands, break it, and feed it to his disciples and eat it himself? Yes. Did Jesus sin or do wrong or go against God's will? No. See, if by even saying that or hinting that even entertaining that thought, you are now indicting Jesus. So that's a big deal, isn't it? It certainly is. God gave us this right. He gave us this right to survive. Will it be taken away? Yes. He knows the answers. Yes. Yes, it will be taken away. It's for this age and this age alone. The age of corruption. That's it. Because when Messiah comes, he is going to, well, there's a lot of pictures that you're going to see when we go through the prophets. He's going to bring back vegetation and agriculture, and And it's going to be awesome. And he's going to feed the world. We're actually, the only time we'll ever have solving world hunger is when Messiah rules and reigns. And he's the only one that will.
Amen.
All right?
Tofu burgers for
And we won't have to eat animals anymore. But until then, we're going to. Okay? Now, it's an important thing because these are God-given things. A lot of Christians are really confused about some of these topics, and they have no answers. Okay? And the death penalty is a God-given thing, and it's about love. Both of these, you could say, are about love because he wants us to survive and he wants us to populate the earth. How well would you live in northern Alaska if you couldn't kill and eat? How well would you live in the desert if you couldn't kill and eat?
a couple days.
All right? We would be in a much more confined space, wouldn't we? All right? So that is the simple answer. Both of these are about love. He allowed us to eat. Everything is for you because remember, he gave us dominion over the earth, not people or principalities, right? He gave us that. It's a right we have. And for survival because he loves us. And the second one was the death penalty given by God because he loves us. Why does he not want us to eat the blood then? And that's another point we've got to take out. All these themes carry on. So they're really important because as we go on, these themes are very big. They're very important biblical themes. Okay? So, love is justice. Innocent blood has to be accounted for. The earth just got its accounting for its incredible, insatiable violence that broke the Lord's heart. All right? Now, we're going to see later on, we're going to see the land of Canaan become cleansed with blood. A blood accounting. And just as the blood cried out of Abel's blood to the Lord, that's what innocent blood does to the Lord. I always think about a verse that really gets the point across. I always think about in Revelation. It's good eschatology because going through that at the same time. You have this part where he's in a vision. It's a prophetic part, but he hears the saints, the martyred saints, crying out to the Lord, "When will our blood be avenged?" All right. And I always think about this is that the Lord told us that all blood will be accounted for. All right, there will be an accounting. And when you see later on, you get the terms, blood be on your own head. That means your blood guiltiness. David always says that to them. Your blood be on your own head because your actions is why this is happening. All right, you are not innocent. Or blood guiltiness on the person who now they have to have an accounting. They have to be killed. All right? That's God's way. Now, I want to point to something else. Now, that is just God's way. I establish it. It's true because God cares about innocent blood. And he wants man to care about it. What is society like when the rulers and authorities don't care about the shedding of innocent blood? What happens to a society? Does it do well? Does it become peaceful? Does it promote peace? No. No, it does not. It does the opposite. It promotes violence. Mm-hmm. And I want you to look this up and test me on this. Everywhere where the death penalty is taken off the table, you know what happens? The murder rate goes up. The death penalty is strongly enforced. And not this, you sit on death row for 15 years and the taxpayers spend $20 million for serial killers. It's ridiculous. That whole system is because they're trying to get rid of it. That's the only reason that is. And they're trying to make it such a burden that people will stop doing it. All right? It doesn't have to be that way. All right? Now, but the truth is, that was instituted by God, and it is to promote a loving and peaceful society. Because when you take it off the table, the murder rate will increase. Violence will increase. Every time you lower the penalties on things like rape and murder and molestation, what happens? They increase. Yep. Now, you think, well, what about the system being flawed And what about, is the system flawed? Yes. Is the system perfect? No. Do sometimes innocent people get charged and convicted? Yes. Well, see, God's rules were actually more stringent and tougher than ours. We're going to get to that when we get to Leviticus, but I'm setting the stage for it now to show you. I want you to get this in your heart now. God actually made that process for the death penalty more difficult. And it had to be proven and tested. God is the one who instituted in society for things to be investigated and tested and tried.
Yep.
It was Him who did that. To promote a peaceful, loving society. Because God knows the thing that the politicians, and none of them ever want to believe. And you know what it is? Man is basically evil. Not good. See, whenever you have that premise that man is good and we'll fix this and we'll come up with our good plan to make a loving society and all that, you're missing it. No, the only way to have a loving, peaceful society is to deal with evil severely. And it's the only way. All right? So, I'm setting the stage for that because you're going to see how that comes into play very soon. Okay? Anyway. Now let's get into blood. Why does the Lord not want any? He told us we could eat animals, but not blood. Because the life is in the blood. We're going to get that. I think I did have you go to Leviticus 17. And we're given this. I've given it to you for your atonement. Okay? So literally the blood was given so that we can make atonement for ourselves and for our sin. It was already a God-given way for us to come to Him and to be atoned for sin. All right? But the Lord is interesting. The Lord said we could eat animals, but you cannot eat the blood. Now, if you're wondering, does that mean that I shouldn't have my steak a little red in the middle? No. People say that they don't get it. Okay, that is not the point. The point is the way animals are butchered. I remember years ago, you're going to think this is, well, I think it's funny. You may think it's horrid, well, whatever. Anyway, years ago, I was going back and forth with this person, and they were, they're a Christian, a real Christian, but they, have cruelty to animals and this whole big thing, right? And this person wasn't a vegetarian, but they were a meat eater until they saw this PETA video online. And this video showed a slaughterhouse and how they kill the cows. And it was so horrendous that this person vowed, I'm never going to eat meat again. It only lasted 2 weeks because he talked to me. But I'm never going to eat meat again. It's horrible. I can't believe that they slit their throats. Like that. It's horrible. Guess what? Guess where that came from? God. The person didn't know it. That's why these things are important. You know why? Because draining the blood, the reason why a butcher slits the throat, hangs them upside down, and drains the blood is because God instituted that in society. And you're going to see a story later on in the Bible where King Saul gave a horrible, horrible decree and really wounded his own men through his own pride, thinking, anyway, and he made them starve while they were fighting, and they were so hungry they ripped open the animals and started to eat them. Okay? The blood wasn't drained. The blood was in the animal. And you're going to see it when we talk about Acts 15. This really is the kicker to explain this. Okay, there was 3 things given to the Gentile churches to come to Messiah by the disciples. It's in Acts 15 if you have any questions. We were not told we have to follow the kosher laws or any of those things. But we could not eat blood because that came directly from here. All right? Sexual immorality. That's in Leviticus. There's a nice big long list of it if you're ever wondering. So people say, oh, that's Jewish law. No, that was given as Christian law by the disciples. That the sexual rules of Leviticus are for us. Anyway, we'll spend plenty of time on that when we get to Sodom and Gomorrah. Yay! Okay. But then you have this other thing, eating blood and the meat of strangled animals. And you think about that, and that's in there, but if you don't get this, that makes no sense to you. The meat of strangled animals is meat without the blood being drained. All right? That's what it is. Okay? Which, of course, a lot of Gentiles did. People did. But the way we eat meat is actually biblical, and it's from God. The way they drain the blood out completely and hang them upside down. So, if you ever see a PETA video and people are crying over the fact that they slit the cow's throat and drain the blood out and hang them upside down, how cruel that is, just remember that this class taught you the truth of God's word, and you're not being affected by the world. Okay? Now, why? Is it God's desire? Does he want us to kill the animals? Does God enjoy them all dying for us to eat? No. Why would he not have it in the beginning and take it away later if that was what he, that's not the point. It's about survival. Okay? And also, because of our climate, vegetation is even harder to produce, all right, than it was before. So, all right. Those things are going to come back, but those are very important things that are established right here. Okay? And the key to it is that the Lord wants us to fill the earth. And that's very important because we're going to get to the Tower of Babel in chapter 11. The Lord wanted us to fill the earth. Okay? So I already went into the next part about the rainbow and about why it was so important. We don't really think about it, but for them it would have been incredibly important for them to be secure when the rain came. They've never seen a storm. And God gave them security, and they could pass it down through generation that he will not do that by water again, right? So that's why we have to take the rainbow back. Don't let it become a symbol of wickedness. Take it back. I hate that. All right? As you could tell. There was a little bit of passion there, huh? All right. So we went through a lot of that part. That was, I think we went through 11 through 17. So let's go on over to verse 18. And now we're going to get into, well, before I go there, there's a couple other things I want to talk about. Now I just want to talk about what are the differences between the old world and the new world. All right? Now, I already told you in the old world, it seems very much to suggest that there was a major land mass, right? And fresh water rivers in it. Okay? And also that we know they had mountains and they had terrain and all of that, but they also had some kind of vapor canopy is what it's called. We don't exactly know how that breaks down, but we know the ecosystem, they did not have rain. Okay? The water cycle worked much like a rainforest would work, but probably way, way, way better than that. But the point is it was healthier. Okay? I spent some time on that already, but it was completely different than the one now. If you wonder why animals got real big and why vegetation was big, all of those things, you know why? Because of that reason. This system is much harsher than the one they left. Okay? And how could some animals have grown so huge? If you had vegetation, imagine just vegetation that you could completely live off of. Imagine just a 5-pound orange. Right? That would be good, right? You dive right into it. Okay? And what would dinosaurs eat? Well, we already talked about that. What's the biggest and most powerful dinosaur on the dinosaur record? Brontosaurus. Now here's the other thing. A lot of it is assumptions. See, we take it for granted that scientists say, Brontosaurus was a vegetarian and T-Rex was a meat eater. But that's all just based on their own assumptions. They don't know that. That's not a fact. These things are accepted as fact, but it is not one. There is no way to know that at all. But they assume based on their teeth patterns, that's what it is. If you're wondering how they came to, based on the teeth patterns, because they don't believe in God and they don't believe this, that they were a meat eater. But yet we have a bunch of vegetarian animals who don't eat meat who have really huge, sharp teeth. Do you know that? Yes, we do. Don't eat meat at all. They have razor-sharp teeth. So, does having razor-sharp teeth mean that you were designed to eat meat? Obviously not. We weren't designed to eat meat, but did we eat meat?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, but we weren't designed for it. God gave it to us to survive, but it's not it was not His best for us. All right? So, that doesn't mean anything because you have big, sharp teeth. That's what the assumption is based on. Brontosaurus could have eaten being a meat eater, or T-Rex could have eaten cantaloupe. Now, it's true, by the way, because they have no idea. It's a total assumption. The other thing, too, is consider how you would eat imagine a 2-pound walnut. How would an animal eat it? Big razor sharp teeth. How would an animal eat a small walnut? Razor sharp teeth.
Coconut.
Right? A coconut. But there's plenty of other ones. The big cantaloupes, and there's so many. There's a bunch. I love watching the Iron Chef. Love that show. Except I could never afford a single ingredient that they ever use in the show, but it's cool, right? You don't know what half the things are. Every single time I watch the show, I find 10 new vegetables I never heard of, right? Isn't that true? All right. Well, how would you eat an acorn squash without big, sharp teeth? How would you eat a watermelon? So does that mean anything? No, it doesn't mean anything. Do we know that dinosaurs even ate meat at all? We don't actually know that. Okay? So, did they probably? Probably. Because does a crocodile eat meat?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the fallen world, right? But the point is that those are assumptions. They're not anything that can be tested, and they shouldn't be taught as fact. But of course, that's all taught as fact, right? But that doesn't mean anything. So, the vegetation and everything would have been way more conducive to a healthy life. Just imagine what was in the garden, created by God. Okay? I'm sure there was a lot of really cool fruits and vegetables there. Right? Okay? And of course, you'd have to add that into random chance if you considered that everything that our body needs to live and all the nutrients and minerals and all the even proteins that we need are in nuts and beans. That's God's meat, right? You eat enough, if you eat nuts and beans, and a lot of them, guess what? You can get all that you need from protein that you don't need meat at all. I'm a total meat eater, but it is true, okay? So God has all we need, but everything your body needs to sustain itself perfectly to be healthy all comes from these things that we just find growing on trees. That's another thing you have to add into the random chance camp. Okay? But from this point on, they don't have that. Now imagine the world, they left that world with this incredible ecosystem, incredible vegetation, right? Now they step off the boat on top of a mountain, and guess what? Things are radically different. They're in a devastated world. And the Lord tells them they're going to have seasons of how we don't know. They might have had seasons before some come, but we don't. It doesn't seem to be anything like, because if they didn't have rain or precipitation, right? Plus, consider now, because of our harsh environment, you only have certain times where you can grow things. A lot of times, if you don't do things exactly right, they'll all get destroyed. Isn't that true? We have a very small amount, if you consider the size of the earth and the amount of good places to grow fruits and vegetables, all right, to grow vegetation in the planet, it's about 10% or less on this humongous planet. All right? So it's a very harsh world. A lot of times it's hard to get fresh water. You gotta, and when you find it, you gotta stick with it, right? So, honestly, and if you wonder how the dinosaurs died, now all the dinosaurs didn't die. I've already explained all that to you, but that's always the question that comes up. What happened? Now, why did we lose some of those humongous animals? Why did we lose them? Because there was not enough to keep them alive. All right? How much food and would you need to feed a brontosaurus? How much food do you need to feed me? I require a lot of food. Okay? Imagine a brontosaurus. Imagine just the sheer energy that they would consume. Does a big old cow consume a lot of grass?
Yep.
I haven't been around a lot of farming, but I've been around enough to know that you have like even 10 to 12 cows. You need to have 3 or 4 fields constantly putting them in them. And all they do all day long is eat. That's it. All right? Consider, you know why a lot of big animals have a hard, why, even lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, right? And the bigger animals more and more die out, and why their populations are so much lower than a lot of the smaller animals. You know what that is? It's simple math. Many of them, there's not enough of a food source to keep their population high. That's what it is.
Good thing.
All right? It's a good thing. Okay? And that's the truth. So, honestly, that is one of the main reasons. Now, I've already gone through how many species we've lost and how many species we lose all the time. Okay? What is a woolly mammoth? Is a woolly mammoth a real animal? Yes. What is a woolly mammoth? It's an elephant. Okay? That's what it is. I mean, guess what happened to them? They died. Like many others. Okay? And a lot of them were all dying before people came, by the way. It's not just mankind that kills them all. Now, are we responsible for killing? Well, obviously, they've all been hunted. But, and of course, the more human beings, the more animals will be hunted. Okay? So there's no way around that. But this is just total sarcasm, but I can't help it. Because think about it. All the greenies who are evolutionists believe and teach about survival of the fittest. So how come we can't? If they fulfill their theology, we're the top dog, aren't we? So what's the problem? This is the life cycle of evolution. You teach it in your classes. There's a little double standard there, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right? So anyway, because they talk about, the classes of eating and going up, well, then we're the top of the chain, so then they should stop whining about it. Okay? Now, I am not advocating just to kill everything for no reason, because you're going to see that when we get to Torah, the Lord cares. And the Lord does never have them kill for no reason. There's only 2 reasons to kill. Okay? Sacrifice and food. And the priests lived off the sacrifice. So the food was not wasted. They actually lived off of it. Okay? So that is clear. So if in case you're thinking I'm going the other way, no, the Lord does care. The Lord cares about animals. He does. But He cares about us more. And that is the reason. It's not that He doesn't care about them, because He does. All right? But this is a much more difficult world. Imagine the first time that Noah ate meat. Imagine how he felt. Imagine what he thought. I'm sure he was kind of like, man, it needs a little bit more something. I don't know. Yeah, barbecue sauce. But if you consider that they just came off, do they have time to have nice big gardens and everything already? They would have had to learn this lesson right away, wouldn't they have? Yeah. Yes, they would have. And who was there with them helping them get going? God. Okay? So anyway, And of course, Moses gives us the back and the clean animals. And that's with hindsight because he's writing this, but you could tell there was already some understanding of that. Sheep, especially sheep, cattle, doves. Okay? And what does all three have in common?
Holy Spirit.
Not the cattle.
They're all
Not the
sacrificial.
They all don't eat blood.
Oh, okay.
None of them eat blood. And what is the number one thing about the kosher laws is and you get in all the birds, there's only a couple birds that are allowed, there's only like 3. Okay? Guess what the birds that are on the list that are allowed to be eaten that are kosher? They don't eat blood. Okay? And then you have deer and the 5 million kinds of deer that there are. And there they have this thing called the ibex, which is really just mini deer. They're all over. But guess what? They were kosher, but guess what? They don't eat blood. See that? It all of a sudden comes, and does it come back to here? Yes, it does. It comes back to this. All right. So, this new world has a harsh climate. We have storms. We have killer storms. Man, do we have storms. We have the climate attacking us and killing us on a regular basis, don't we?
Yes.
How many people die in natural disasters?
Even today with that ice storm.
Yeah. On a regular basis. Now, we have a lot less people die now because of modern technology. But you take that away, okay? And we get to know when hurricanes are coming. But you know how many times people died and they didn't know hurricanes were coming? Galveston, Texas, before, just in the last century. All right? You had 30,000 people in Galveston, Texas dead from a hurricane. They had to pile the bodies in the streets. This is in Texas. All right? Because they didn't know it was coming. This is what storms do. All right? So this is a harsh world. Obviously, and I think we get that. And of course, if you're going to trek around the world, you have to learn how to survive. All right? And that's really is a real key to it. So there isn't the vegetation and things to keep a lot of these huge animals alive. The only ones that survive have to do what? Kill and eat, or they won't live. Isn't that true?
Yep.
You look at bears. When bears are tested in captivity, you offer them meat or you offer them nuts and seeds and berries, they take that. They eat meat for one reason: to survive. That's why they eat it. But then you get a taste for it, like everything else. I got a taste for it first time I had a hamburger. Okay? Be hard to forget that taste. Especially with bacon on it and cheddar, right?
He's blaming you for something.
But you got the taste for it. Okay? So, but many animals in captivity never have meat and they're fine. You know that? If they get what their body needs to sustain themselves. Okay? All right. So, that's an important thing. And a lot of Christians have kind of this stuff in their mind, and they even hear scientists talk about how we have these right here because God gave it to us so that we could eat meat. Yeah. And I look, see, you hear pastors say that, don't shame him in front of people and don't be disrespectful, but you take them aside and say, you know what, you need to check that out because, God didn't design us to eat meat. So you're a little off there. You're listening to Nat Geo a little too much. Okay, you got to come back to the Word of God. Okay, and these come very much in handy when I'm trying to bite into a big old cashew. All right? Or something like that. All right? Or an apple. Sometimes you get those soft apples. Once in a while you get an apple that's like rock hard. You notice that? Am I the only one? And your teeth really come in handy then. If you get put to the test. Okay. So let's move on now. I think so that's really the big thing. If you're wondering why all of this and why would God do this, it's to allow us to survive. Why did so many of the large animals die? Because there was not a sustained source enough to keep them alive. Which ones survived? The smaller ones. What do we have in Africa right now? The two of the biggest, actually all three of the biggest land animals are in Africa. You know what they are? Elephant, hippos, and giraffes. Are all of their populations low?
Yes.
Yes. And they get lower and lower. Why? Because it's hard to keep the food source alive enough and going enough to sustain them.
They're worried about giraffes, aren't they?
Giraffes,
Yeah.
the truth is, giraffes would have probably be extinct if it wasn't for people, conservationists helping them, keeping them alive. Now, some of that is by being hunted by man. But do you think men hunted dinosaurs? Of course they did. See, because we're taught dinosaurs didn't live with people. So you could never have that thought. Did mankind hunt a T-Rex and eat that sucker? Yes, they did. They probably ate for a month, the whole village.
We learned that when we were kids. Fred Flintstone, man.
Yeah, there you go. Fred Flintstone. There you go. All right? Of course. So those big animals were targets. Are big animals targets for mankind now? Now we're so sophisticated. We have modern food and we have, chemically made food, right? But if you were in the jungle, the biggest animal around, the men in that village are going to take that sucker down and feed his people, aren't they? Yeah, they are. You know why the biggest fish more and more are becoming endangered? Hunting. All right? There's less hunting going on now than there used to be. All right? So, but mankind is the problem, but we're supposed to be the top of the food chain, so we're just following, Darwin's precious, revelations. So God gave it to us for survival. And in those two things, in the changing, harsh climate and problems in vegetation and hunting, is why we've lost so many big creatures. And it's not just big creatures we've lost. If you look at the fossil record, how many creatures we've lost many. Many, many, many. There was something funny that happened 2 years ago. I'm reading this article. And there's this, it's in the fossil record, there's this like fern thing. Like, you're talking about a fern? Yeah, well, whatever. And there's this fern, okay? And it's in the fossil record. In all of our textbooks, it says that this fern is dated to 60 million years ago because of where they found it in the rock layer. Remember, I already explained to you how they get these assumptions. According to the rock layer, each rock layer that they find it in, depending on Paleozoic and Flippozoic and whatever, right? That's where they get their millions from. So you find it here in this one, okay? So this fern in this fossil 60 million years ago, guess what? They found it in Australia at the top of a mountain, alive.
Oh boy.
Yeah, there was a problem because it's here. We have it. We have a fern. We have it. It's not a fossil. All right, that was a fossil, but we still have the fern. Okay, it's a 60 million year old fern. Okay, you understand? See, the assumptions break down. It's all built on that. Okay, but things die. Things happen. People die. This just fell. I just realized that was like a foot down. It's from me jumping around being crazy. I can't help myself. No subject, I think, fires me up like this one. Because I am sick of God's people being ripped off and led astray by evolutionary humanists. I can't take it anymore. All right? And the only way is for people to start really taking God's word. And the main lesson of all of this, and we're almost pretty much done with the scientific stuff, because once we get through here and we get on to Noah's sons and we get to Abraham, then we're going into storyline. All right, so this is the last one where we're going to mention any of this stuff. Okay, so I got to get it all out. But remember the main point here, the Christian scientific method. It actually goes back to the original scientific method, which they do not follow when they base everything on assumptions, by the way, because it cannot be tested. All right, is that we test, we see, we try, right, and we apply. Well, the Christian scientific method is, we take this, what does it say about this? Then we look around, we see what we have, and then we try to test it and apply it. And you know what we found is that it's always, always reliable. And what does that do? Just more and more proves the outside of time that the Holy Spirit wrote this book. Because whenever it mentions any of those things, when all of our incredible modern wonderfulness, we test it, we find it to be true. Okay? And that's really the key. And the fossil record, where did it come from?
Blood.
The flood! The fossil record came from not just the flood, because we've also seen that volcanoes can make them now. Okay? But most of the fossil record came from an incredible disaster called Noah's flood. Alright? And that is a key thing, because in evolutionary science, they actually think that's something that goes against and disproves the Bible. Do you know that? All by their assumptions that they start with. But there's no other way to make them. One of the greatest proofs we have. In modern, in all the stuff we have, one of the greatest proofs of biblical accuracy, historically, okay, is the fossil record. Okay? And see, you see how that can be twisted to be the exact opposite if you don't have that information. Alright? So next time you see this fossil of this egg is from 85 million years ago, when the T-Rex was the most dominant dinosaur, and they evolved into birds. That's the biggest thing now. What happened to dinosaurs is they became birds.
Yeah.
You know that? Yeah. But the crocodiles still haven't become birds yet. I'm waiting for that to happen, but it just hasn't happened yet.
Oh boy.
Okay? So these are the smart people that come up with these things. Now I want to give you a simple answer of why they see some, and you know what it's all based on? It's based on one thing. That whole theory is based on one thing. It is based on the fact that a lot of birds and a lot of the skeletons that they found of dinosaurs have similar joints. Have very similar joint structures and bone structures. And they say this. And they believe that disproves this. They disproves the Bible. And they think that proves evolution. Because they must have come from this, because look at the joints. They must have come from the same thing. See, from that one set of glasses, you could say logically, with my predetermined glasses, there is no God. Right? There is no creator, there is no God. So those are the glasses I have on. So I see I see birds and reptiles, and a lot of these ones we found with very similar bone structures and very similar joints. Almost identical. And I think that means they all came from the same ancestor. I put on biblical glasses. There is a creator, there is a God, a designer. And I look at this bird here, this condor, and this dinosaur fossil, and look at their bone structure and very similar joints. Wow, they have a common designer. Both are logical. Well, I'm talking about that assumption based on your predetermined assumption.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the only two conclusions you can really come to with that. Right? But see, because they already start from the premise there is no God, there is no creation. You look at it from a creation perspective, that makes perfect sense. Okay? Does any other animals feed their young milk? Does that mean that we all came from one thing? How would you explain that? A common designer. Does any other animals have eyeballs that work like ours? Or sense of smell that works like ours? They have noses. Anybody? That means we all came from the same thing. That proves it right there. Doesn't it? Dogs have noses. Apes have noses and fingers. So we had to come from apes. Or, oh, right, common designer. right? If you have a designer and he has him, just take 10 of his designs. These are 10 of his designs, his best designer ever, right? And you look at all of his plans. Are you going to find any similarities that uniquely mark that he was the designer?
Yes.
Of course you are. Okay, so, anyway, this is the last time I get to talk about this stuff, so I got to go all the way. I'll try to at some point later because I won't be able to resist. All right, so anyway, these are the important things to get, and that really are about this new world. It's a harsh climate. You have to kill and eat to survive. Yes. Does that mean, well, they should have just, of course, they got right away. Noah planted a vineyard right away. Make himself some wine. You see that? It wasn't even that long from now. Okay? So, yes, of course. All right. The other thing you have to remember this too is that, look, Noah lived how long after the flood? 350 years. Shem lived 500 plus years after the flood. So do you think that Abraham made up this information? He got it from the horse's mouth about the old world. The record that Noah and Shem, right, brought to the new world. Of course. And it's very likely that Abraham knew Shem. At least knew who he was. Maybe even knew him intimately. It's very, very, very possible. Okay, so now we're done. I did the best I could to explain a lot of the other stuff. If there's something I missed, just ask me questions because, of course, there is more to the new world now. All right? And how they're going to survive and all of that. It's much harsher and it's much more difficult. But I want to now get rid of that and I want to move on to this great story that we have here. All right? So they're off the boat. The Lord makes a covenant with them, gives them the rainbow, gives them his rules. God gave them commands here. Okay? And extremely important commands. That those that would love the Lord, the God of Noah, would follow these. And I'm sure that went for a couple generations until they spread out, and of course they lost it all. Right? But we're done with that. Lord gives them the rainbow, establishes the covenant. Noah sets up altars, sacrifices the clean animals to come to the Lord, and then the Lord makes the covenant with them. Right? So, all of that is done. I explained the new world. The old world is gone. This is life now. Okay? We have ice on top, ice on the bottom. I explained that last week. And that comes very much it matters when you're talking about how did everything spread out all over the world, because everybody came off this boat. Everything came from this boat. But what about bacteria and fleas and microorganisms? Everything came off the boat. How could that be? They were on the people and the animals. You think any of them were? Of course they were. Yes. All right, and lice. All of that. Okay? They were there. All right? Okay. And the other thing, too, is we have things adapt over time and learn how to survive. Why do mosquitoes suck your blood? They're horrible. We're all going to ask the Lord about them, but why? Why do they do it?
They're definitely going against the Lord.
To survive. That's the simple answer. Lord, to survive.
What about roaches?
Why do they do what they do? To survive.
Oh, goodness.
Right? That's why they do it. Each creature, the ones that could find a way to live, lived. The ones that could not, didn't. And that's where we have a process called natural selection. All right? And that you think that's an evolutionary word, it is not. It was actually designed by a Christian. that word was coined back in the 1700s. And it's exactly what we see in creation. Okay? Whatever animal could actually adapt and find a way to survive in a certain climate are the ones that could live there. The other ones either had to move on and find somewhere that they could live or something they could do to survive or die. Did humans have to do the same thing? Of course they did. Did animals have to do it? Yes. We have tons of field mice and frogs at my house. Just ridiculous amount. I have a wildlife preserve at my house. Okay? And we keep getting snakes around. There's snakes that like to live around my house. You know why?
There's the mice.
Because there's mice and frogs everywhere. We have all these little field mice. They're everywhere, man. You pick up you go out and pick up a big log or a stick in the back of my yard and you'll see field mice. They're everywhere. They come into the house on a regular. They used to go into my car.
They do.
They went in my car. One night I jumped down and just ran up Connor's leg. One of them ran back up into the ventilation system. Yep. All right. But why is there snakes in my house? Because they found a food source. Okay, that's why. That is natural selection. Okay, the ones that can survive can do this, and the ones that have lost information have gone here for mutation, have lost this. Now they can do that. That's how it works. Okay, we explained a lot of that, but it all I love it because I love how it all backs up this story. But also I love it because when you get some of that in you, you're so much more of a strong believer because you're constantly being barraged every day with this atheistic evolution. It's hitting you. We are in the religion of this country, the religion of this state, and the religion of this town is atheistic evolution. Atheism is a religion, and evolution is the theology. That's what it is. It is. We are not a Christian society anymore. Okay? We are an atheistic evolutionary society. All right? And Christians are constantly being smacked and hit and with it like I used to really be sensitive because a lot of people are sensitive to like, oh, they mentioned like something about a spell in that movie. You could let your kids watch that. That's so horrible. But we all want to watch Jurassic Park. That never happened. Anyway, right? I love Jurassic Park actually, but because I know the truth. It's just a movie. Okay? But the point is, I used to, when Connor was little, he watched a lot of shows and did little cartoons, like, on Nick Jr. But then I was always pointing out evolution and everything to him. And one day he finally said, Dad, I know that there's no evolution, and I know that God created us and created Adam and Eve. I know the ark is real. Connor has to say this back to me because I'm always pointing it out. And once you realize it, every single thing you hear is laced with it. It comes at you 100 times a day. From every direction. There's no running from it. You can't cut it out. Unless you're going to run and hide in the hills and start your own little commune, okay? There's the only way you're going to be able to get away from it. All right? Did the early Christians have to deal with the Roman culture? What came with that? Was it all around them? Yes. They were into the world, but not of it. All right? But that's why I think it's very important to get set straight on this topic. Because this topic is the one that you're actually being attacked on the most in your belief system. All right. Absolutely done. Noah then is off the boat. All this stuff has happened. The new world, blah, blah, blah. Now he's there and some time has passed. He's built himself a vineyard. All right? And he's probably excited about it too when finally those grapes are ready. Probably first taste of the old world. Man's had a rough time the last couple years. Right? Finally gets this vineyard built. He gets his grapes. He gets it all. And he has his first cup of wine, and probably multiple cups, but yet remember, it's new, isn't it? Maybe the grapes have changed, maybe the fermentation process has changed, maybe it's way stronger. Right. It's not regulated, by the way. Our alcohol is regulated. Theirs is not. Okay? And it takes a while to make it before you get used to how strong it is and how strong it isn't. Right? Anyway, so it doesn't necessarily mean that he just tried to get hammered. Okay? Don't just blame Noah as being a bad. Some people will look at this. This just proves that Noah was. No, it doesn't prove that at all. Cut him a break. He's been through a lot. All right? Now his son should have cut him a break. And that's the point of the story. Honor your father and mother. Whose command is that? God's. All right? Now, so what happens is he enjoys this new vineyard a little too much. Okay? And he ends up totally drunk and naked. Which probably means he was really drunk, might have puked. That's why he's naked. Okay? So, his son, Ham, finds him. And instead of honoring his father, trying to help his father, right? He makes fun of him and mocks him. Now, we don't get the whole thing of the story. It could have been way worse than the text says. And, just because the text says this, you think, oh, he mocked him. Oh, he called him dumb. You know what? First of all, in that culture, it's different anyway. That's God's culture. But the point is that it was probably way worse. And he went and tried to get his brothers to come and laugh at him too. All right? But what does his brothers do? They grabbed a blanket. They walked in backwards. And they covered their father. Ham shamed him and didn't cover him. And that is, this little story seems so, trivial, like it's not a big deal, but there is so much here. All right? Love covers. And that concept comes through the rest of the Bible. Even Peter quoting Psalms, for love covers a multitude of sin. Right? They covered their father, honored their father, and Ham shamed him. So, because if you're wondering, then you look down and see this, and you're wondering, he curses Canaan. You're like, what is happening? All right? Because verse 24, when Noah awoke from his wine, he knew what his youngest son had done to him. He wasn't that drunk. Okay? He had enough to remember. 25, so he said, cursed be Canaan. And then you're wondering, if you're a first-time reader, what is happening? Okay? Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers. He also said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. Now, if I was ascribed to the seed of Cain view, like I explained to you before, or the Sethite view, both of them are pretty much the same. It's just, Sethite means the blessed race, and the seed of Cain means the cursed bloodline, right? Okay? They pick up on this. This is their next way into the new world. It's right here. And all the Canaanite bloodlines are cursed and are damned. All right? In the Old English way that they would, in the original way that they would write it. Okay? That sneaks into here. I already blew that apart. Okay? I hope I blew that apart for you. I hope you get that is not accurate, and it is really an assault on choice and God's love. How could God so love the whole world if as only a select few actually even have a chance and the rest are already cursed and condemned before they're born? Right? I think we already get that. But anyway, if you're going to build that theology, then they bring it into the new world through this story. Okay? So anyway, if you have more questions than that, if you've come across it or heard people teaching it and you have questions, please come talk to me. I can get into it a little bit more. All right? But anyway, here's what's going on. Who is Canaan? Because Canaan hasn't been introduced. Canaan is the son of Ham. His future, his son. Okay, and we know Canaan goes and establishes and becomes the land of Canaan, which then the Lord sends Abraham and his descendants, and eventually Jacob and his sons, after coming out of Egypt, to take over and wipe out the land of Canaan. Okay? So what is Noah doing here? He's prophesying. Now this story stirred him up, and he saw something. And through it, he saw something about Ham, and it wasn't necessarily about Canaan, but that brought him to this prophecy. Okay? Now prophecy is something you need to get used to. It's probably one of the number one biblical things that we see from the beginning to the end. Okay? The Holy Spirit, through the mouth of Noah, is now prophesying the future. And this exactly happens. And Canaan's land becomes so wicked that the Lord has to wipe it out through bloodshed. That's what the book of Joshua is about. And it actually starts here. Okay? So, but he also is blessing his other two sons, and of course, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. Now, if you're wondering, a lot of us don't even get it, but going all the way back to Shem is where we get the term anti-Semitic. Semitic means come from Shem. That's what it means. And it was not just having to do with Israel. Actually, most Middle Easterners, okay, because remember, Abraham's other son was, my brain, Isaac and Ishmael. I could not think of Ishmael. My brain didn't want to go there. I kept thinking of Hagar, his mother, and I couldn't think of Ishmael. Okay. Was also a son of Abraham. Okay? And which all follows the line of Shem. Okay? So of course, and they took over the Middle East, and the Canaanites were almost wiped out. Pretty much were wiped out in the future. Okay, but anyway, the term Semitic came from, originally meant the people group of the Middle East. But through time and history, it really, because the hatred more and more came towards the Jews, now that means anti-Semitic means you hate the Jewish nation. Okay? But if you go back far enough, that wasn't what it originally meant. The word has kind of changed, but that's where it came from. Okay? If you're wondering where the Semitic part came from, it actually came from the name of Shem. All right? So anyway, so blessed be the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. See, he's prophesying. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. And Noah lived 350 years after the flood. Now, if you're thinking, Noah was a bit harsh there. Ham was out of line, but yet, did Noah really have to curse his son and his future generations because of this? Now, I don't believe that's exactly what happened. Was Noah mad? Yes. Was he mad at his son? Absolutely. But he was stirred up, and this prophecy came out. The Holy Spirit spoke this word. It wasn't Noah. All right? But you also see that the words have power. Noah has authority. Okay? And since pretty much everyone alive came from his bloodline, he's got a lot of authority. Okay? So, anyway, but it wasn't just him being mean. Okay? Now, you could say, did the act of Ham bring this about? I guess it's possible, but I think some of that is speculation. It's very possible. We don't know that per se. We know that Noah was upset. This stirred him up. He saw something, and when he reacted, this is the words that came out. And it happened. What makes a prophet a prophet? I'm going to say this for the next 2 years. What makes a prophet a prophet?
Doesn't filter it really.
What they say comes true. That's what makes a prophet a prophet. Okay? Period. If you're a prophet of the Lord, your word stands when it's tested. If you're not, your word fails. Okay? Well, this word comes very much true in the future. All right, we got 15 minutes. Let's go to chapter 10. Actually, I want to get now this is on the ground and I need these. Because I want to go to the notes. I need this thing so that I can put this out, so that I can put this here. All right. I want you to turn to the notes All right, now I already showed you the chart of the ages, right down from to Abram, right from Noah and Shem down to Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. You see that. We already did the next page, so why don't you go down at the bottom. It says dispersion of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and you see that map. You should see this map that says, you see Shem, and you see Japheth and Ham. Everybody find it? It's good to see, and this kind of maps out the original way of how they spread out. Okay? But it still all is in the Middle Eastern area. All right. So let's go to, then look up top. It says, now 10 is descendants. I want to go to one thing because a lot of us don't get it. I want to go to verse 25. I'm not going to go through every verse here. It's well, actually, let's go to verse 9, because this one is important because he becomes a very important person. Which is verse 9. This is introducing Nimrod. Okay? He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Now, if you look at the words in Hebrew, we think mighty hunter. It means he was really good at hunting deer. That's not what the point is. He was a mighty warrior, is what the really says in the original. Okay? Warrior. And he ruled and took over with an iron fist. Okay? And he is the one who is leading the charge for Babel. Okay? It was not a good guy. And it's also believed through, Jewish oral tradition is that he was also, was leading the people of witchcraft, and that's what the whole Tower of Babel was about. Okay? And we know that, remember when I said about the fallen angels and the giant race? And then Moses writes very clearly, and also afterward. So who brought witchcraft to mankind? Fallen angels. They were there. And it goes all the way back to the beginning. All right? So the Tower of Babel, you go, oh, well, they're just making this big high building. Why is it so bad? No, this is them standing in opposition to God and making a name for mankind and power through witchcraft. That's what it's about. Okay? So anyway, there's a lot more to say on that, but that's, I don't have to get too technical with it. But Nimrod is a bad person. Okay? And he was not a nice hunter who was really good at hunting and taught people how to hunt. So you read that way, it's kind of what you think, but that's not the picture. Okay? See, because look, verse 10. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Kelni. Just got to say things fast because you have no idea how to say them. In the land of Shinar. Okay? From that land he went forth into Assyria and built Nineveh and Rehoboth, Er and Kala, and Risen between Nineveh and Kala. This is the great city. So, you see that he was the first conqueror. And he established these cities with an iron fist. Okay? So, that... You see, he actually is the one who founded Nineveh. Yes. And some of those other cities survived. Okay, anyway. Let's move on because we don't have to go through every name. Now go to verse 15. Well, you see the mention of where the Philistines came from in 14, and it is Pathrusim, and this one is hard. Kasluhim, something like that. Anyway, it's a tough one. This is verse 14. But you see Moses puts in the little thing, from which came the Philistines. That was the ancients of the Philistines. And the Caphtorim. 15. And Canaan became the father of Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgashite, and the Hivite, and the Arkite, and the Sinite, and the Arvadite, and the Zemrahite. No, that one is Zemarite, and the Hamathite. And afterward, the families of the Canaan. I should get a clap for that. Come on. Come on, Alex. Right? Of the Canaanite were spread abroad. He's pointing you, this is where, from Canaan, is where the nations of the Canaanites came from, which is what Israel is going to take their land and dispossess them. Right? So, go down to 25. All right? Now this one is important because this one has been misinterpreted. A lot of people and some Christians kind of put forth that Peleg here, this is where Pangea happened. That is not true. It is baloney. First of all, you would have had catastrophe all over again. Everyone would have died if that's true, if that happened. It would have been ultimate catastrophe. Okay? What happened here is when the earth was divided by language in his day. And 2 sons were born to Eber, and the name of that one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. That is, the dividing of the language happened in his day. And much like you see, remember when we went through chapter 1 and chapter 2 in Genesis, and then 3 zooms in, right? That's what you get here. This is not all chronological. You went through this list, and now Babel happens. It happens somewhere in the middle of this. Okay? But this is giving you the record of the nations that spread out from the 4 couples that came off the boat. Alright? So, now in the middle of that brings us to chapter 11. The Tower of Babel. Okay? Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. Now, if you're wondering, was there a universal language? The answer is yes. Could there have been tribal languages that people had already started to come up with? Of course that's possible. And do you know that many ancient cultures, a lot of languages came about out of people coming up with ways to communicate secretly and became a language. Do you know that? I mean, even Star Trek has its own language. So, you know what I mean? So, right? And if you like Lord of the Rings, you know that there's Elvish. And Tolkien wrote a whole book on Elvish for a fantasy story. Okay? True. You speak Elvish, don't you, Jordan? You look like you would. Merlock. That's the only one I know. Anyway, okay. So anyway, that, of course, is possible, but there would be a universal language, absolutely. Now, why is that important? Okay? I want to give this to you. It is very, very... Okay, I'll say it a different way. Remember what I said about the Christian scientific process. We take what this says, and we apply it, and we look around, and we test it, and we see if it holds water. Well, if you look at language itself, it absolutely holds up water, and it is the only way to explain what we have. Because truthfully, all right, that universal language, without the confusion, if it never happened, there would have been no reason to ever forget it. Oh, that just because it was like 500 million years, and then we had to kill off the Neanderthal because we had this big war with modern humans and Neanderthal man, and kind of intermixed, and that's where we have different races came from. This is all scientific stuff. This is what the smart people teach, by the way. Okay, I read their stuff just so I know what they're saying. All right. Now we've found evidence because of some skeletons and things they found together that there was. They found this couple that was a Neanderthal man and a modern human woman. When modern humans finally turned and wiped out the Neanderthals. And because of that, okay, this is true. I read a whole article on this. People, are making millions off of these findings. All right. So because of that, they had children who was a mixed Neanderthal human, and then eventually the modern humans wiped out the Neanderthal man, and blah blah blah. And so then we had modern language, and because we have hundreds, thousands of years, and then you just add in more time, that fixes everything. How do you get, just more time? Whatever time you run into a problem in evolution, there's only one answer to it. Add more time and it'll start to make sense. It doesn't fix anything. You would still find remnants of a universal language. Even with modern humanity, because if you even follow their Neanderthal modern human thing, right, they would have had an original group who would have had an original language, who stayed together. And when people spread out, they would have had that language. And modern humans have only been like 100,000 or 200,000 before Neanderthal man died out. You're all looking at me like, why are you... This is honestly what is being taught to our children in school, to my children. And they get a much different teaching when they come home, let me assure you. Okay? And I would not want to be Connor's teacher. Because he's looking to be a lot like me, and I caused a lot of problems. Okay? But it's ridiculous. There would absolutely have been much more of lasting of a universal language, because what is the need to constantly come up with new ones and have no contact? Right? If you already have a perfect communication device, right, that you can communicate with everyone. If you've traveled, you've seen how much the language barrier is a barrier. It can take two very mature, wonderful people and turn them into Neanderthal man, because there's just no point, right? It's just nothing. If you've been there, you've experienced it. It's one of the most frustrating things on the planet. Okay? And I've been in times in Israel, oh my gosh, where my brain, because I'm always focused and listening and trying to hear the languages, and there's a couple times where you could hear like someone rambling in Spanish, someone rambling in Hebrew, and someone rambling in Russian or something, and it's all going around, and my brain, and I remember a couple times going at night and just sitting there, and in my brain I'm just hearing, and I just couldn't take it. I wanted going crazy. All right? Or there would have been a logical reason to keep the universal language alive. Oh, just add more millions of years and that solves that problem. That's always the answer. Right? Okay? Fine, add millions of years. But anyway, the point is, what do we see? We see language spread across. But what we see very interesting is that we have so many modern languages. Thousands. But yet, they all, like the animals in the ark, you can take about 300 and bring them all back to a common ancestor. We actually have 3 basic formats of language. 3. All right? And in that area where you are in the globe, there's about 50,000 other variations and dialects that twist off of it, but yet you can trace them back with similar features. Okay? So it's very interesting. All right, it's 8 o'clock. So I'm going to just quickly do the story, and then we'll pick it up with the language stuff and spreading out of the nations and everything next week. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words, and it came about as they journeyed east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. Why? Because it's probably plush. A plain, great for crops. Why would you leave? Right? And anyway, and they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven, and let us make for ourselves a name." Now, they're not making themselves a name on the earth. They are the earth. They're making themselves a name in the heavens, standing against that mankind is strong. It's an opposition and opposed to God is the whole point. All right? "And let us make for ourselves a name, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth," because they're saying that if they stay together, they'll be stronger as they spread out. Right? And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language, and this is what they begin to do. The evil of man, right? Of course, they already have evil plots. And the Lord is, again, intervening in salvation in mankind. But here's the kicker. And this is what they begin to do, and now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Nothing they choose to do will be impossible for them. All right? Anyway, let's leave it there. We'll pick it up right here next week. Please read too. We're going to start reading, going a lot quicker now because we're going to be getting into storylines. So 12, 13, 14. Please read through chapter 15 for next week. Okay? Now let's take a break.